brand new next door. The old Henderson property across the street was purchased by them. They knew very little about them and were suspected of being Yankees. The Henderson property included a 2-story farmhouse, barn, outbuildings, and 212 acres, suggesting that they were reasonably well off. Mr. Henderson ran the farm successfully until he became too old. He listed it for sale and relocated even further south since his daughters had moved out and no one else could take care of it. The girls were furious about this because they thought he would spend their inheritance before passing away. They couldn't do anything about it because he was in good physical and mental health. Although I've never been fond of girls, I found it amusing. My aunt sniffed and said that they put on too many airs to be proper, and I secretly agreed. That's just old Southern slang for being conceited. It was by accident that I met them. Steam was coming from under the hood of her Cadillac, which was parked on the side of the road. I gave up. Neighbors were the ones who did it. It seemed like she had watched too many redneck horror movies, as she refused to open the door or roll down the window, instead giving me a terrified look in her eyes. I got back in my truck and left because it was getting colder and raining heavily. I phoned the sheriff's office and told them about her when I reached the top of Henderson Hill. Everyone is aware that in order to receive reception, you must reach the top of the hill. You were in a dead zone until then. Regardless, the locals did. Well, damn it. That was our county Mounties all right, protect and serve, unless it was too hot, too cold, it was raining, or there was a game on. Will, why didn't you help her? In different circumstances, they were quick fixes. I made an attempt. She wouldn't open the door. Wendell, come on out here and do something. I can't just leave her like that. All right, let me find my slicker. Did you notice it's raining? Indeed, and it's chilly. Move on, it's getting dark, and she's probably scared as hell. You can take it back to the station. I have some leftover barbecue from the Democratic rally if you hurry. You can have the slaw and buns to go with it. Got any baked beans or potato salad? Wendell, don't push it. I could be convinced to give up a few pieces of fatback cake if you move quickly. Okay, don't get too physical. In roughly 10 minutes, I'll arrive there. Has that type of cake frosting. We rode back down the hill together after he met me 20 minutes later. She remained there, sobbing. She partially rolled down the window as Wendell introduced himself. Ma'am, do you need help? Please say yes. It simply stopped after it began to spew smoke out from under the hood. I was unable to reach anyone on the phone. Thank heavens you discovered me. Ma'am, I couldn't find you. Will fulfilled it. Would you mind opening the door and allowing him to take a peek inside? He was a decent mechanic once. Before everything became computerized, I was still a pretty good mechanic. You now have to have an MIT PhD, or you were screwed. I stopped because I could not afford the new equipment. Anyhow, it was a hobby, not a means of support. It took roughly 2 seconds to identify the issue. The radiator hose on her bottom was split. It was always the bottom one, damn it. Ma'am, you need a new radiator hose. After Wendell drives you home, give AAA a call, and they will come get it. They should be finished before lunch, and it's simple to fix. She won't not tonight. You remember, Billy went out of town. He won't be returning until Tuesday because his daughter is getting married on Sunday. When Wendell said that, he appeared way too happy. She had reverted to her panicked state. I cannot simply stop here. My spouse would murder me. I turned to look at Wendell and watched as the cogs in his tiny little brain turned. Damn, he said it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Hey, Will, why don't you go get one of your heavy-duty trailers and haul it for her? I was running late for supper because it was cold, late, and raining. However, you don't put your neighbors in a difficult situation, especially the afraid female neighbors. I'll tow it back to my property and store it safely behind the fence. In this manner, the person fixing it won't need to go get it. Are you okay with that? Thank you, we will cover any costs you impose. Officer, will you please take me home? Wendell was unable to open his door quickly enough as she spoke about the officer as if it were the next best thing after heaven. He was closest to the wreck on Route 12 when the radio crackled. I hate this rain. I apologize, lady. Will can take you, I have to go. Will, please finish that barbecue, I'll stop by later. Okay, I'll store it in the shop's refrigerator. Where are the keys? You know, this time, close the door behind you. I don't want another cat to have kittens in there. You ain't never gonna let me forget that, are you? Not for as long as the odor persists. Are you ready, Mrs. Hatfield? Now that she had revealed her name to us, I suppose I wasn't really a homicidal maniac who preyed on older, attractive Yankees and committed serial rapes if a police officer could attest to that. She continued to sit as far away from me as possible. Along with her spouse, she owned the Henderson property. No lights were on when we pulled into the driveway. Why aren't the lights on? Because the power is out. Haven't you noticed how dark it's been the last mile? What am I going to do? Do you have a flashlight, lanterns, that sort of thing? Not that I know of. Now put on your cap of adventure. It is connected to the power system if it is still there. Luckily for her, it remained there and managed to run, just barely. It was a large diesel generator, creating a tremendous noise inside the structure. About 4 hours would be enough fuel. Until the power is restored, you should be fine if it doesn't quit. This time of year, it usually doesn't stay off for very long. If I were you, I would buy a drum of diesel just in case and have that thing tuned. She was taking notes on her tablet and nodding angrily. I'll go get your car right now. This is my card, which is numbered. Call if you need anything before your spouse gets home. The address is on the card. Your car will be on my lot. Until tomorrow, Ms. Hatfield. I can't thank you enough. It is not a concern. Good night. I left after confirming that she was inside safely, knowing I would get a harsh response from Sherry. Have you been somewhere? What keeps you from calling? No, you're okay, and no, I did miss you. I tempted her with some finer points. Sorry, honey, the police called. They wanted me to pick up a car off the side of the road because Billy is away for the weekend. In about an hour and a half, I'll be home. I hope you gouge the crap of them, making you work in this weather. I'll get my due, don't worry. She only cared about money. Her parents were fairly well off, and I was doing okay, so I didn't get it. Though from the way she acts, you would think we were extremely poor. She has never asked for anything, as far as I know. That was not how she had been until about a year ago. I've always been curious about what set it off. I got the car and the trailer, and I arrived home at my promised time. She left me a note saying dinner was in the microwave and that she had already gone to bed. I took a quick shower and a bite to eat, and then I was out of the world until the alarm went off. You forgot about the chilly rain the previous evening because the following day was bright and warm. I went down to Advance and got the hose, rolled the car off the trailer, and fixed it because I didn't have anything going on at the shop. When lunchtime arrived, a man in his late 40s entered wearing a suit, a tie, polished wingtip shoes, and a harried expression. My name is Bennett Hatfield. I arrived to arrange for the towing of my wife's vehicle to a garage. Who's the best mechanic in town, in your opinion? He was speaking with my general gopher and assistant, Charlie. Myra, Bobby, and him were my friends and coworkers. I had a rental business where I would rent out various types of equipment such as ditch digging machines, tractors, backhoes, and dozers. It was a profitable venture because no one would pay upwards of $29,000 for a backhoe to perform a few hours' work when they could rent one for a few hundred. In a way, the collapsing economy benefited my company. Instead of hiring it done, more people were doing it themselves. My tools were unattractive, but they were all in good working order mechanically, and dirt doesn't care if you painted it recently. I performed okay, charging slightly less than the chains. Charlie came straight over after pointing at me. He extended his hand. Will, I couldn't help but smile. Bennett Hatfield. Myra, who typically handled the suits, was standing behind us and assumed he was there to rent something from our party supply department. She laughed heartily. He scowled. Sorry, Mr. Hatfield, we're not laughing at you. Think about it, Hatfield and McCoy. After a minute, he stood up and grinned back. Well, hopefully this won't turn into a fight. My shooting iron is back in Philadelphia. Okay, I turned mine into a plowshare by melting it. How may I assist you? I arrived to arrange for the towing of my spouse's vehicle to a garage. Could you recommend someone to me as I don't know anyone in the area yet? It's not worth it. This morning, I fixed it since I had some free time. A fresh hose and some antifreeze were all that was required. Your spouse can drive it home if you bring her over before 6 o'clock. He appeared taken aback. All right, that makes sense. What is my debt to you? $40. The antifreeze and hose receipts are located in the dash. That's not right. Yes, it is. Check the receipt. No, what I meant is, how much for your trouble? Yes, I was unable to charge you. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to live and work as a mechanic. We are neighbors. You live on Henderson Road and I live on Howell Road. Our homes are essentially next to one another. It's just not done down here. You don't charge your neighbors for a kindness. I attempted to clarify as he appeared perplexed. I would charge you for a backhoe rental if you so desired. I would expect you to charge me for legal advice if I went to you because your wife told me you were a lawyer. However, if I asked you to lend me a tool or if you needed a ride somewhere, someone would be offended if money was offered. Recognize. He gave a nod. I believe so. It will just require some getting used to. I'm really grateful for you, though. In 45 minutes, he returned with his spouse. Not only was she younger than I thought, but she was also more attractive than a trophy wife. She looked early 30s, maybe 40. I suppose living in luxury doesn't exhaust you as much as earning a living does. Her spouse simply dropped her off, presumably too preoccupied with legal matters. She kept thanking me for helping her, and eventually I told her to stop. That's enough, Ms. Hatfield. It was nothing really. It's pretty amazing where I come from, but maybe not up here. Call me Angie, since we're neighbors. She extended her hand. Will, and this is Myra and Charlie. They were attempting to learn more about her and were practically breathing down my neck. Grinning, she shook hands with them and, rather than go, she asked Myra to give her a tour, pausing to examine different pieces of equipment and bombarding her with questions. She was very grateful for the party rentals and supplies, especially the castle. With its turrets and flags, the castle resembled a tent fit for a circus. If necessary, it could be divided into rooms of varying sizes. It was highly well liked for weddings. It had been a real circus tent once, but the circus folded and I bought it at auction for almost nothing. In 24 hours, I could turn a field into a fantasy land with it and a few of the smaller tents. Sherry had gone back to her binging ways. She desired a Cadillac, just like our new neighbor's vehicle. 2 years ago, she had to have her Chevrolet Impala, but it was just not good enough anymore. She couldn't trade for 4 years if we got it for her. I tried to remind her. I would only consent to receive it in that manner. She sneered. I need a new car because that one is almost worn out. It only has 39,000 miles on it. Why do you oppose me on this? Because you simply want a new car, you don't need one. Sherry, we're not able to keep up with our neighbors. He's a lawyer, for crying out loud. For the time being, your car will work perfectly. You are free to obtain one on your own if you don't think, so long as my name isn't on any documents. She was with me there. Her credit score was appalling. During our dating years, she had fallen behind on a car loan and some credit card debt. I refused to assist her with the credit card but did help her get her car back. She declined to pay for it. Before the wedding, there's something you should know. I don't believe in credit cards. They are wasteful and a trap. But you have two. Yes, they both have a business component. I use the other card twice a year just to keep it active and only use the American Express when absolutely necessary. I only make use of them when I discover a great deal on equipment. To exclude my home and business from community property, I had her sign a prenuptial agreement. My parents had owned the house before they moved to see my sister in California. When they retired, fell in love, and left the house to me. We couldn't see the urgency because we hadn't even completed the ownership transfer. I never thought to bring it up, but Sherry believed we had. I filled out all the paperwork just in case. I sort of stumbled upon my calling. I was mostly doing site prep work for builders as a subcontractor, and I was sick of having to travel 45 miles to get the supplies I required. I was in business, I had some money saved, and my parents had given me a little more credit. For the first 3 years, I invested nearly all of the profits back into the company, buying new machinery. In my 4th year, I made up for my parents. I was proud of what I had accomplished in a short period of time by the time I met and married Sherry, and I didn't want to lose it. We got together at a Christmas party hosted by a contractor I frequently worked with. Things like that were usually avoided by me. I didn't find it exciting when people tried to impress each other or themselves. But I went because I was bored that evening. Naturally, every single woman was dressed to kill. Since I'm a guy and there were some really attractive people there, I danced, flirted, and had a great time. I got to dance with Sherry, even though she was there with someone else. We both sensed the spark, but I decided not to pursue it because she was with someone else. The hostess gave me something as I was walking away. Call her. She gave me a cheek kiss, we shook hands, and she walked away. When I got in my truck, I took a look at the paper. Sherry was the one. I really meant to call, but Christmas was a busy time for my party supply business, so I kind of forgot about it and put it in my dash. She pointed to me when she entered the store a week before Christmas and spoke with Myra. Myra gave her a receipt while giggling. She approached. I'd like to pick up my rental. Sure, what is it? She gave the paperwork to me. Man, attractive as an escort to a holiday celebration. 5 hours is the term. Responsibilities include being a nice conversationalist, a reasonable dancer, and the capacity to kiss. Unable to dial a phone, forgiven if you're willing to learn. To be delivered to the specified address. She was around 5'8", what could I say? I'll personally take care of your rental, miss. In addition, if you're not happy with the services, we guarantee your money back. All right, enough. She extended her hand. Deal, but I warn you, I expect to be satisfied, or I want my money back. We went for coffee and talked about more terms and conditions after she eventually started laughing uncontrollably. Myra, not believing me, forced me to take her to the mall when she insisted that I buy a new suit. Her spouse attended, stating that such entertainment was too good to refuse. Just want to be able to see her make a man miserable that isn't me. Come on, I would have taken the first one, 4 hours, but it just wasn't right. After 8 suits, she pronounced it to be the one. I gave a little sigh of relief, but her spouse merely chuckled. You don't think you're done, do you? No way, we weren't finished. The socks, along with the impeccable shirt and tie, had to withstand scrutiny. It required an additional 40 minutes to select the shoes. You're not going to pick out my underwear, are you? Myra did not flinch. Silk boxers, navy blue. I already took care of your desire to feel as good as you look. Thank you very much. Remind me to fire you sometime soon. Only if my severance pay includes you modeling the suit, and I expect to see those drawers, too. We've hired you again. Will you allow us to leave the food court if I beg you on my knees? Maybe, if you give me your word you'll get your hair cut tomorrow. As we climbed into the car, her husband simply laughed. I decided to rent a Cadillac Escalade for the weekend since, well, I was dressed to the nines, so why not ride in style? When I got to pick her up, I felt pretty snazzy, but as soon as I saw her, I realized I was overmatched. If I had been the artist who painted that dress on her, I would have loved it. She looked elegant despite the daring nature of her outfit. She was shimmering green, with a neckline that plunged almost to her navel and a slit on the side that revealed the top of her seamed hose. I was unaware of how she restrained those puppies, but I later learned that it was done with double-sided tape. When I assisted her in getting into the car, I did catch a glimpse of her garters. Though I'm pretty sure we had a conversation on the way, I can't recall a single word to this day. We interacted and danced. I met people that I quickly forgot about. She was the life of the party and was frequently asked to dance. It was her decision, but she always gave off an aloof look. She danced a slow number with this guy who was starting to act a little aggressively, and when the song ended, I was halfway across the floor. She took my hand and turned to face Mr. Octopus. No more slow dances with anyone but you. We returned to the table, hersing in my ear. For me, it was effective. While driving home, she nibbled my ear and cuddled up as close to me as she could. I gave her kisses until the cars honked each time we came to a stop. At her house, we actually steam cleaned the windows before we left. She offered coffee and, after about 20 minutes, asked me to lead her to the door. While she was fixing the pot, I sat on the couch and she excused herself to take off her dress. She had been gone for so long that I was on the verge of sleep when I heard someone clearing their throat. I nearly toppled off the couch. She meant to get out of her dress without putting on anything else when she said so. There she stood, wearing only her garter belt and hose. I believed I would become blind. Tight belly, well-groomed bush. His lips were glossy and swollen. I was unable to speak. She became tense when I remained silent. But since you really get me excited, let's stress test my mattress and save ourselves a few months. I'll just write it off to experience if you beat me and run away. I did leave to get us some breakfast, roughly 12 hours later. For 2 days after that, the Escalade stayed still. She was insatiable, alternately assertive and obedient. We did everything I knew to do to a woman, and a lot more, which she was happy to teach me about, that I was unaware of. After 2 months of living together, we got married after 7. She was 25 and I was 29, so we decided to spend a few years together before starting a family. 3 years had passed, and I was still dropping clues about starting a family. She started to change about a year ago for unknown reasons. She became more materialistic and demanding. She concluded that in order to start a family, we needed a new home. I didn't see the need for additional bedrooms because our home already had 4. Then, after I paid it off, she maxed out the credit card that she had managed to obtain despite her credit history and didn't communicate with me for 2 days. She worked, made a respectable living, but she was never wealthy. Everything but the power, our phone plan, cable, and other regular household expenses, aside from groceries, were paid by me. I let it go because she had initially agreed that would be her responsibility. If you were to open her closet, you would discover 4 or 5 pairs of shoes that were never worn and clothing with tags that she probably would never wear. For roughly 5 days, the car incident was followed by a silent treatment. On the 6th, she came home to find me removing her clothes from the closet. She gazed but remained silent. I refuse to live this way. I will live alone if that is the case. When I called your mother, she wasn't pleased but said you could spend 2 weeks with her. By then, we ought to be able to locate you a home or apartment. I'll cover the security deposit, the first 2 months' rent, turn on the electricity, and make the same monthly payments. That should give you enough time to retrain yourself to live independently. You'll need to pay for yourself from now on, so better learn how to budget. She shocked me by passing out right away. I took off her clothes, laid her down, and used a cold cloth to wipe her forehead. She startled awake. Will, I had the most bizarre dream just now. I can't recall why you were discarding me. Through the open door, she saw her side of the closet, saw the suitcases on the floor, saw the clothes on the bed next to her, and began to cry. She began to cry and begged me not to send her away, promising that she would get better. After letting her go for a short while, I told her to come to the kitchen and wash off her makeup. She slid into the kitchen chair without looking up at him. Sherry, I swear to you that I will no longer live this way. You seem like a different person to me. The out-of-control spending, the tantrums, the refusal to discuss starting a family. Say so if you want to leave. Things must change if you don't. When she did finally admit it, she kept thinking back to her early years and admitted that she was terrified of becoming a mother. She was the middle child in a trio of children born barely a year apart. She was lost in the mix as the middle child, so when her parents divorced when she was 12, it had a profound effect on her. My mom's still crying, I noticed. She was alone with 3 teenagers, and the stress got to her. She began to drink and paid us little attention. After the first year, Dad moved halfway across the nation and never returned. I refused to subject a child to that. I took her hand in mine. Honey, I apologize for your early years. However, I'm only referring to one houseful here. We'll wait at least 2 years before deciding we want another. And I promise never to abandon you. This is a huge deal. I swear. After about 3 weeks of gentle nudging each other, we finally turned into the typical young couple that we were. She even opened a savings account and cut back on her spending. She showed me the balance 3 months later, and I was impressed. I expressed my pride in her. She chuckled. Don't be too proud, it'll be empty in a little while. I was expecting her to tell me she was going to buy the new car, but she told me no, she was going to use the money for something else. She was going to buy furniture for the nursery, which meant I would have to paint it, and would I like light blue? It took a moment for it to really hit home. What just did you say? She smiled, that smile women get when they know they've managed to completely upend your world. I mentioned we'll have a son in roughly 7 months. You should make a few more savings at the store, especially in the final stages, as the nursery needs to be completed. I had never sobbed in her presence before. She had just returned from the doctor when she told me in my office. She wanted to surprise me, so she had stopped taking her medication. Whoa, that plan really paid off. She was scared when the tears began. Did I do something wrong? I believe that this was what you desired. Should you? She only said that before I kissed her all over. Her tears quickly blended with mine. When we emerged later, Myra sensed a problem. Known for her discretion and sensitivity, she blurted out, "What's the matter between the two of you? It appears that you were both pleased with someone who gave you a severe slap. Myra, can you keep a secret?" Yes, she nodded. When it came to sharing information fast, the woman outperformed the internet. Myra, we're expecting a child. In 7 more months, a boy will be born. I know you won't tell anyone. We wish to give my mother a surprise. Assure me. She proceeded, mumbling on how as she struggled to take her phone out of her pocket. Grinning, I watched her for a moment before turning back to Sherry. I hope you already told your mother. She smiled in return. I visited before coming here. Before today's business closes, everyone in the town will be aware. I reasoned that telling her would relieve some of my load. By the time we headed out for lunch, people were stopping us in the street, giving Cher hugs and shaking my hand, just like she always did. The congratulations came so fast that we hardly had time to eat. Upon our return, we saw a large white banner with blue bows hanging over the counter. Best wishes, Will and Sherry. It's a boy. Myra smirked as I turned to look at her, as if I could maintain such a large secret. You knew that if I was unable to tell anyone, I would blow up. After chuckling, I returned to the office. Her pregnancy wasn't good. 7 months later, Sherry was placed on bed rest. We would never have another child after I saw her pale, drawn face. For her, it would be too risky. Sherry wasn't a very good sufferer. The only person who could tolerate her presence after her mother moved in was her mother, mainly because when things got really bad, she would tell her to shut up and leave her alone for a few hours. It took 17 hours to deliver the baby before a C-section was performed. Sherry had had enough. She told me when she was able to speak at last. Never again. I concurred with her. Her tubes were tied before she left the hospital because she was already there. The fact that William Bryan Sanford weighed nearly 9 pounds helped to explain a lot of her suffering. Like me, he had a full head of thick black hair. When the nurse said that it would probably come out before his true hair color showed through, I was disappointed. She was mistaken. He kept his jet black hair and never lost it. There are no words in the world that can adequately express the feelings of parenthood if you have never felt them. It was simultaneously incredibly beautiful and horrifyingly real. Even when they are grown, it is not and never will be about you. They take on a life of their own, and everything you do is motivated by their well-being. Romantic weekends and impromptu travels fade into the past. Now, even if it's just a trip to the grocery store, you have to organize everything and load the required equipment. Sherry didn't adjust to motherhood as well as I had hoped, which was disappointing. Yes, she was obviously in love with him, but as soon as I arrived home, she would give him to me and curl up on the couch for an hour. It was baby recovery time, as she put it. I didn't mind. I would carry him around while I talked to him about my day and my goals for the two of us. I discussed everything I could think a boy would be interested in, including girls, camping trips, Boy Scouts, Little League, and girls. He would gaze fixedly at my face, grinning and gurgling, not comprehending a word. The fact that he never seemed to cry with me annoyed Sherry to no end. He would be crying when I got home, especially if he wasn't feeling well. 90% of the time, once I picked him up and started showing him around, he would settle right down. After the birth, I took 2 weeks off to spend time with Sherry and Billy. There was a large sign in front of the building when I returned. Rentals of Sanford and Son equipment. Nothing trashy. Charlie and Myra were standing there beaming. It started to make me cry. I had a slideshow of Sherry, Billy, and the 3 of us as my screensaver. I gradually became friends with the Hatfields. One day, Angie came in asking to rent a tractor. I questioned her about her need for a tractor. I would like to start a garden. My seed has already been ordered from Baker's Creek. To make my beds, I need a tractor and other supplies. I wouldn't rent a tractor to her, but I did admire her tenacity. It took her completely by surprise. Why not? Because you are not proficient in using one. If you're not experienced with them, tractors can be extremely dangerous. I would feel terrible if I rented you one and you ended your own life. In addition, I would lose you as a friend and client. I don't want to live with that guilt. Additionally, I saw that little Yammer and all of the equipment in your shed, so you don't need to rent one. Everything you require is already here. When Mr. Henderson retired, he sold all of his farming equipment at a large auction. He enjoyed gardening and having a tractor around, so he eventually purchased the Yammer. It won't crank. I venture it didn't have 500 hours on it. I noticed the determined expression on her face. I was aware that she would find someone else if I abandoned her. Most likely, the battery is dead. Hey, it's said tomorrow. How about I stop by and take a look at it? Oh, I couldn't take you away from your family. You're not going to. They will be with me. I took Sherry and Billy over that setting, and Angie spent the entire hour stroking and holding the baby. Billy's crying irritated Sherry, but it stopped when Angie held her. I connected my battery charger to the tractor since I had brought it. Bennett and I explored a potential garden spot while it was charging. You sure you want her on a tractor? His response was fairly truthful. No, but you're not aware of her level of tenacity. I want you to watch over her and offer her some advice. We discussed it as Angie and Sherry vanished into the kitchen and returned holding a large bowl of potato salad and a platter of sandwiches. While we ate, we discussed her gardening endeavors. They refilled the drinks, cleared the table, and paid attention to me. Ben and I have discussed this. Before you take any serious action with the tractor, you will have a seatbelt and a roll bar installed. We will conduct your first lesson in the barn, so please come on out. She sat on it when I took it out of the barn. I showed her the brakes, the throttle, the hydraulics, and the gears. I'm gonna tell you this, and I want you to remember and be careful. The gears in a tractor don't work like the ones in a car. I asked her to drive it around the field while shifting it into the lowest gear and low range. It was going so slowly that I could give directions while walking next to her. I made her halt so she could practice raising and lowering the hydraulic 3-point hitch. I had activated a turn plow. Aim to never operate your tractor without a necessary piece of gear. In the event that the clutch slips or the vehicle encounters a sharp incline, the equipment will strike and prevent you from toppling over. Considering the alternative, it might shock the living daylights out of you, but it will be worthwhile. I asked her to lower the plow and go over the area she had chosen a few times. Ben was taking pictures of her, and she was beaming with joy. When I put the tractor back in the shed and turned on the key, she became agitated. The battery died, and it refused to start in any case. My friend will be here on Tuesday to install the seatbelt and roll bar. I'll get you a battery so he can do it himself. He'll hand you the key, and I'll have a spare made at that time. However, you should wait until Ben gets home before driving it alone. Next Saturday, when we visit, I'll demonstrate how to operate and swap out the equipment for you. After exchanging handshakes and hugs, we left. On the way home, Sherry was very animated. Her home is stunning. It doesn't appear to be the same as it did when Mr. Henderson owned it. Her walls are covered in prints that most likely cost thousands of dollars. When we were talking about art, she revealed that she had a trust fund. They still own their house up north, did you know that? Once owned by her grandmothers, it is now hers. Well done, guys. They deserve it, they make a nice couple. The rest of the way home, she remained silent. Later, I caught her checking the price and looking up the prints she had seen. She was correct, there were thousands among them. Sherry returned to work. We weren't quite to the point where we didn't need her income, and she enjoyed her work. In addition, I knew she would go crazy if she spent the entire day at home by herself without anyone to socialize with. We enjoyed showing Angie how to operate the tractor. Though he wasn't as excited as she was, Ben also learned. In addition to planting her garden, she purchased a small tiller to use in lieu of a tractor. When she picked the first green beans she had grown, she broke down in tears. She continued to grow the garden. She laughed at my warning that eventually it would become too much for her. Ben arrives home late after leaving early. I'm not much for lounging around watching TV, and there's only so much housework I can do. Additionally, it provides me with material for my blog. She did, in fact, launch a blog called Gone Country where she shares her experiences adjusting to life in the country. In actuality, it was very well liked, humorous, enjoyable, and occasionally somber. There was an abundance of images and video. Due to my assistance, I was in a few. She called me a spiritual advisor in all matters national. Especially after Myra started reading it, it was embarrassing. Angie made the decision early on to be as organic as possible. I got her in touch with a friend of mine who kept horses and had stables, and he agreed to give her some manure for her garden. She had to clean the stalls in order to obtain it, though. I assumed that would be the last of it, but she soon had thick clothes, boots, and gloves. On her blog, she dubbed it her crap uniform. She even posted a picture of herself on her blog, completely nude with her hair covered in a bandana. Twice a week, she cleaned 3 stalls. Her heap of compost was growing into a mountain. For a while, Sherry accompanied me whenever I went over, but eventually, she slowed down to almost never. I've heard about all I can stand about manure, crop rotation, and organic pesticides. Billy and I went on almost every other time, with me watching over him from his carrier in the shade. Angie held him a lot more often than she did gardening during those days. I asked her if she had ever wanted children after we grew closer. Yes, I did. We were tested when that failed to occur. Ben is sterile, he had an accident as a child. We discussed adoption, but he felt uneasy about it. He was my soulmate and husband, and I couldn't bear the idea of being apart, so I dropped the topic. Occasionally, as I hold Billy, I reflect on the things I'm missing. After that, he messes up in his diaper, and I'm relieved that I can give him to his parents. Oh my, take him here. Like she was holding a bucket of toxic waste, she held him out to me. Later, Ben emerged and joined us in the shade. Will, if you can, please do something for me. I have a get-together planned with my new partners. It should be here, please. A traditional southern barbecue. Sherry, and you should cater it for me. And Will, either you get paid or we don't talk about it anymore. This is a business function, not a get-together of friends. I am aware of how excellent yours is, and I would still need to pay someone. I want it to stick in their minds for a very long time. It had been a few years since I had cooked professionally, and I missed it. Yes, I replied. He appeared relieved, as did Angie. And grateful. Will, I'll need tents, chairs, tables, and other party supplies. Angie will take charge. Since most of my clients will be in attendance, I want to leave a positive impression. It's not much time to set something like that up in 3 weeks. Angie started to coordinate by coming to our house every other day. I asked how many people I should cook for first. We have 80 confirmed, but figure on 100. We don't want to run out of food. How many kids? Not one. Adults only. I scowled at her. What? Nothing. She gave a snort. Will, spit it out. Make your point if you have one. All right. I believe you are conveying the incorrect idea. This is the South, where family values are highly valued. Invite the spouses and kids to establish a more intimate relationship. Most people will be impressed, but some won't like it. In addition, even though you should send invitations, you should also give them a call. Ascertain the number and ages of the children attending, and ensure that the games and entertainment are suitable for the attendees' age. It will resonate much more strongly to say you'll be sure to come than to say your presence is requested. With her mouth hanging open, she called Ben while seated. Have the invites been sent out yet? Not at all. All right. They must be altered by us. Additionally, I need each wife's name and phone number. Later, I'll explain. Goodbye, dear. She gave me a wary glance. My comment: you will find out about her affair in the part 2 ending. Subscribe and hit the bell button. I will see you there. We will find out if OP can handle this mess or not.